Hey yo, what up gang? I'm Luke and this is a pool table. But there's one small problem. This is my dining room table and I haven't turned it into a pool table yet. But I'm convinced in the next 48 hours that I can turn this into a pool table. And there we go. I did it. So stay tuned, learn from my mistakes, and you too can build one over a weekend. First of all, I don't have a fancy workshop or many tools. I do have the Ryobi starter pack, but that's it. Now, I'm just an office worker. I'm not a builder, but I'm sure I can figure this out. I mean, Jesus was a carpenter, and I don't think he had a trade certificate either. Kudos to DIY for Knuckleheads and to Barber's Paddock. I'll link their channels below. They both made very cool and inspiring pool tables. One rotates and one's fully custom. But it didn't make a lot of sense to someone like me, just a regular punter who's not a woodworking expert. They missed some key details, so that's what I'm here to learn and here to show you. This is my dining room table. I bought it on Facebook Marketplace 8 years ago for $50. It would probably cost more now in fuel just to go pick it up. So why the 48-hour time limit, I hear you ask? Well, my wife is very patient, but she still wants somewhere for our kids to eat. Apparently, dining like this isn't sustainable in the long term, according to my wife, but I do agree.
Sorry, can you do it again?
Does that make sense?
I know.
I don't want you to sound like the villain.
My wife's heavily pregnant, so this time I'm going to use protection to save the carpet. As you can see, our table has served my family well. She's a bit haggard and rough, a bit puffy and swollen with a few chips. She's been around the track.
Not surprising, but there's quite a few high spots, so I'm just going to sand them back, throw down some primer. I won't worry about filling up any of the cavities or dents. I think the board itself will span over it. You should have noticed it.
Let him cook! Let him cook now! Let him cook! I said let him cook!
Using a sheet of 180 grit sandpaper and a palm sander, I knock off all the high spots. Then I take a paint scraper and I scrape back all the old paint, any food or anything that's sticking up. Then I'll use a water-based primer and apply 2 to 3 coats and sand it back gently. Then we're good to go. Now I did need some help for this part. Real men ask for help. So meet Riley. He's normally my golf caddy, but he's also a builder. And he's got a ute, and he's offered to help me get these materials home. Top jam boy. Because like me, it's too big. God's gift can be a curse. This won't fit in my wife's car.
Let's talk wood, one of my favourite subjects. Behind me is a sheet of 17mm thick form ply. It's 2400 millimeters long by 1200 millimeters wide. So that's 4 foot by 8 foot. Now why not slate, I hear you ask? Slate is insanely expensive and super heavy. We're moving soon, so I don't want to shift that. It's going to an even smaller apartment. Form ply is used in the construction industry. It's coated in a phenolic laminate resin, which means nothing sticks to it. It's beautifully flat and smooth. And if you got the lads round, knocking the top off a couple, and you spill a few frothies, it's not going to swell. As I said, this sheet is 2.4 meters, which is far too big for the space that I have. So I'm going to cut it down to 2 meters and 50 millimeters, which is this in feet.
Using a combination ruler, I set it to 35 millimeters, which is the distance from the cutting blade to the edge of the cutting rail. Next, I'll mark it out. Then using a straight edge, I'll mark out my cut. Then I'll clamp down both sides and we're good to make our cut. Woohoo!
There are a lot of measurements, a lot of numbers to remember. So rather than pausing or rewinding the video, don't worry about it. I'll put my email address in the description below. Just send me an email and I'll send you a free copy of the PDF of my plans. All right, let's move on. We've got a problem. The table seems far too wide. The length seems good, but I've never played on a pool table with these dimensions. The ratios seem way off. I've just rewatched the videos that inspired this build, and these are the dimensions they used. I'm gonna go do some more research because, yeah, it's not right. Ugh. Ignore the mess. This is my wife's desk. She chooses to live her life like this. So, according to ChatGPT, I'm right. The table is too wide. Apparently with pool tables, the ratio is meant to be 2 to 1. So 2 times the length to 1 times the width. So if I want the pool table to be 2 meters and 50 millimeters, the correct width should be 1 meter and 25 millimeters to build it as close to regulation as possible. So what do I do? Do I listen to the experts that have built these before, or do I put my faith in AI? Let me think about it. I've thought about it, and I'm going to go with my gut. I'm going to cut it down. Hold it with your hand. Good boy.
Still the same number.
Is that?
Yeah.
You there? Yeah. Perfect. So I've measured out 1 meter and 25 millimeters, and now we're just going to mark out 35 mils, and that will be for the blade of the skill saw. Let's talk pockets. All right, I've made some templates on 5mm grid paper. Now it is pretty tricky and time consuming, I'll be honest. So if you want to see that process, I'll put it right at the end of the video. I've got a spare block of timber and it is square for the area that we need, so that's perfect. So I'm just going to clamp it down here to the end of our table to hold it in place. So now using a combination ruler, we are going to mark out a 45-degree line. Now that we've marked it out, we're going to get our template, we're going to place it down here, we're going to put the corner in the corner, and then we're going to match up this line with the line that we marked out. Now with our pencil, we're going to mark out our corners, one here, one here, one here, and one down here. Now that we can see that, we're going to take our 45-degree combination square and we're going to mark those out. Now, using a paint marker, we're just going to put some dots in the corners. There we go. Now you can see it better. I've cut out an insert from our corner pocket template, and we're going to check that it all sits down here nicely, which it does, and we'll line up that middle line. Put it in between the dots. Perfect. Now using a glue stick, we're going to apply some glue.
That's easy.
Perfect. And apply some glue to the back of the template. And we're going to flip it over. We're going to align the center line with where we cut out, and we're going to match it up to the dots. Perfect. Bing, bang, bong. And we are on the lines. Using some line marking spray, we're just going to make an outline on the piece of timber. I'm going to use a knife, and we are gently going to lift this. Now we just got to let it dry. She's all dry, so using the paint marker, just going to draw a line again, just in case we knock it off while we're cutting it out.
2, 1, go. Ready, set, go!
Next, I'm starting the middle pocket template. I'm going to mark out the center line with the combination ruler, line up the template with the center line, mark out the corners with a paint marker. Now using the inner part of the template, line up the center line and the paint dots. Apply glue to the back of the template, line her up and stick it down. Apply line marking spray. I used a hairdryer to speed it up. Peel off the template, mark out the rim with a paint pen, and drill out the holes. Using a jigsaw, cut out the template. Here we go. Corner pocket template done. Now moving back to our corner pockets, I'm clamping the template down and making sure she's square. Not bad.
Beautiful. Now taking our paint marker, we are going to trace the line on the inside of our template. Actually, we'll spray it, it'll be easier to see.
In hindsight, this was not the best idea. I'll explain why soon.
We'll remove the clamps. We'll let it dry.
Now we're going to drill out the corners. Now taking my jigsaw, I can work my way between the holes and cut out the pocket. Let's see if it fits. Very nice! Now there's still quite a sharp lip on the edge of the pocket, so using a palm sander and a piece of sandpaper, I knock it all back.
There we go. Pretty bloody good if you ask me. Only 3 more to go for the other corners, and then I can do the middle pockets. Now, I still have a bit of hand sanding to go. This is when a router would come in clutch, just to knock off these edges and make it all smooth, but I don't have one yet. So if you could like this video and subscribe, maybe you could prove to my wife that this is all worth it.
Well, here's where I went wrong. As you can see, pencil shows up really well on the playing surface. I used the paint and a paint marker because I couldn't see the line on the viewfinder of my camera. However, it was an absolute waste of time. It's a lot easier to see the thin line for cutting out, but hey, that's why I'm here, to make the mistakes so you don't have to.
So all the corner pockets are done. Now we need to do the middle pockets. Our total length is 2 meters and 50 millimeters. So let's mark out the middle, which will be the same as the width. So we're going to need to mark it out at 10.25.
Taking my combination ruler, I'll mark out a center line, line up the template and clamp it down. Then
Take our pencil, mark it out.
Then I remove the clamps and the template. I'm now drilling holes at each end of the center line and each top corner. Using my jigsaw, I follow the pencil line and cut the pocket out.
Middle pockets are all done. I've just centered the sheet of form ply, and I've realized that because I brought the sides of the sheet in for the width, it's now going to be into the table. So it's only a problem if there isn't a solution, and what I can do is brace the table and then just cut a notch out here for the catchment area. So that's a problem for tomorrow. I gotta pack up now and start making my kids dinner. Everyone loves a rail. So let's talk timber for our rails for our pool table. Now, I was going to be using Merbau decking timber and these primed MDF sheets. However, as I was sanding the Merbau back, there was still a very oily residue. So I'm not sure how the glue would stick while I was trying to laminate these together. So I've scrapped that all together. I've been to Bunnings and
Bunnings, round 2, baby.
I've got these pine slats. It did take me a while to find ones that were straight. However, I'm back now. So these are 89 millimeters wide, 19 mil thick, and they are 2.4 meter lengths. They're about $17 a piece. So what my plan is to chop 4 of these in half, bring them down to 1.2, glue them, screw them, laminate them together. I'll do the same for the full lengths of the 2.4, and then we'll be able to cut them down for our rails. I was going to punch some brad nails into here, however my brads are too long, so that would wreck the desired finish. Let's go.
I start by marking the boards at 1.2 meters or 3.9 feet. I cut them all down with a circular saw and give all of the faces a thorough sand, and then I wipe them down with a rag to remove all dust and debris. I'm now using Gorilla Wood Glue. I place a bead of glue on both sides of the timber and spread it out with a cheap paintbrush. Next, I flip over and align the boards. Now, I only have a limited number of clamps, so I place a clamp, insert a screw, and progressively make my way down the board. Now, it would have certainly been a lot more straightforward and faster with more clamps, but hey, I made it work with what I had. Now I start to wipe off the excess wood glue. I wish I did a better job of cleaning this up. You'll see why shortly. Up next, I'm making some spacers. I've measured out 15mm strips, which I'll then cut out using my circular saw. Always use an offcut underneath your saw blade so you don't scratch the playing surface. Now, moving round the table, I can pump 2 brad nails into each spacer on each corner of the table.
Was that meant to happen?
Nah. They know how to cut another one.
I'm cutting down the long rails now. The table length is 2 meters and 50 millimeters, but I need to cut these rails down to 2 meters and 80 millimeters, which is an extra 30 mil. So it's for 15 millimeters overhang on each side of the table. That's what the blocks are for. Now, the same as the short rails, I apply glue, spread it out, and screw it down.
So I've run out of clamps. It is what it is. You got to work with what you got. So that's why there's still things waiting to be glued. There's things that are dried, things that are cured and set already. So my table width is 1025 millimeters. You saw me add the 15 mil blocks, and that's just a guide for the 15 mil overhang. So I've got to add 30 mils onto the 1025. So that makes the side rails now 1055. And that's from the furthest tip to the furthest tip of the 45. So using my set square, I've drawn it out on both ends. Now, if I had a drop saw, it'd be great to cut this. It'll be a lot more straightforwards, but I don't. So I'm going to go very slowly and very carefully with my circular saw, and we'll just see how we go. If we need to buy more timber, it's not the end of the world, but let's not try stuff it up.
Woohoo! I use my roofing square as a guide. That's the first rail cut. I'm stoked. There we go. Second rail in the bag.
The glue has set and cured for the long rails. So the table length is 2050 millimeters, and I've got a 15 mil overhang on each side. So I need to cut this down to 2080 millimeters to allow for the overhang. Now, I've already cut the short rails down. I don't know whether it's best to align it, trace a line, and then cut that. That will always work. But the other option is to cut a true 45-degree angle and put it all together, but it might not line up straight. So I'm in a bit of a crossroads here. However, I'll never learn unless I do it properly. So I am going to cut the true 45-degree angles and put it all together. I'm going to back myself on this. Hopefully it pans out.
Internally, I'm debating whether this is the best approach, but I measure it out, mark it, do the 45s with a roofing square, place an offcut as a cutting board underneath, place the first clamp, place the second clamp, move the first clamp again, get a guide, and start cutting. But here's where things go wrong. I'm not sure why it's sparking, but like a fool, I keep going, have a second crack at it. And I'm ashamed to say, I had a third crack. How did I make it to adulthood? I still don't know what's going on, but I keep driving the saw through it. What a silly goose. Aha! There's the culprit. How did I miss this?
Big problem, I hit one of the screws. So what I'm going to do is remeasure it and have another crack. I'm such an idiot. I actually marked out where the screws are and still drew my line through it, but I guess this is all part of the learning process.
Round two.
Thankfully, I have enough timber. Let's try it again. Great, they come together quite nicely. Time to cut the next rail. I've just double checked my measurements again and I was a millimeter out. So it's well worth double checking before you cut. There we go. All the rails have been cut, and I'll tell you what, I am absolutely stoked with how that turned out. Everything's in place. I ran my combination ruler, 15 mils just around the perimeter, just to ensure everything was sitting flush with the blocks, and it is. So I've applied 4 clamps. It would certainly be great to have more, but I've got to work with what I have, so it is what it is. But I am absolutely ecstatic to have it this good with these 45-degree cuts. For a noob, perfect. Now I'm going to move on and cut these pockets. For the corner pockets, using our combination ruler, I am going to mark out 15 millimeters across on both ends, and then that marks out the playing surface beneath where the form play sits. So using our corner pocket template, we're going to align the center line with the 45, and we're going to align the corners with the playing surface lines that we have marked out. There we go, it's looking good. Now we will mark each corner up here of the timber, there and there. We'll take that down using our combination square. We will mark out those 45-degree lines. Like that. And like that. Brilliant. Now we'll just double check that that's looking good. We will also mark out our center line here. Bang and bang. Now from here we will take the inner from our corner pocket template. Made two, cut one out. Now we'll align the middle lines here and here, and we'll make sure that our center line is running straight with our 45-degree cut. Now that we've got that, we will just go round the paper and mark this out, throwing some cross-hatching lines so we can see where to cut. Now I did copy this off DIY Knuckleheads, so kudos to you, because this is a great way to do it. So once we've made our cross-hatching pattern, you'll be able to see there, that's our line, and we'll be able to cut it with the jigsaw. Now for our middle pocket holes. Our rails are 2080 millimeters long, so we're going to mark out 1040 millimeters, and we're going to mark it out. It's our midpoint. Now using our combination square, we are going to follow that line. There we go. Oh. There we go, marked out nice and straight. Now, using our combination rule, we are going to mark out 15 millimeters, which will be where our playing surface sits beneath. Using our middle pocket template, we're going to align the center line and align the baseline with the lines that we've drawn. So throw out center line in there. We'll put our baseline along there, and now where we're going to line out our midlines, 1 and 2, and we'll mark out each corner, 1 and 2. Great. Now using our combination square again, we are going to mark out those lines onto the rail. Awesome, we've got a square here. So I'm taking the inner from the middle pocket. I'm going to be placing that here in the middle. Now I'm going to align that midline that we saw and the midline over here, and make sure that it's lined up with our center line.
There we go, just like that. And the same as the corner pockets, using our pencil, we want to do our cross-hatching pattern. Make sure you go heavy on this. You can never do too much. We want it to be as easy to see as possible.
Great, now we can see where to cut.
Now that both inner pockets have been cut out, I give it a quick sand. I wish I did a better job at cleaning up the excess glue again, but we live and we learn.
Good morning! I've been away for Easter, hence the fresh haircut. So, I've set my circular saw using this knob to 27 degrees. I'm going to use this to trim down the rails where I'm going to stick the bumper to. Now, I've never cut anything on an angle before, but I'm here to give it a crack, so how hard can it be? Let's find out together.
This is H3 Outdoor Framing Treated Pine. It comes in lengths of 90mm by 45mm and at a length of 2.4, and I think they cost about $20 per length. Now you might not be able to see, but my saw was struggling with these profiling cuts. I went through about 3 batteries per length, and I only have 2 batteries, so it took bloody ages. But we got there.
Alright, great. The rails have all been cut, or the profile's been cut. I'll still need to trim them down, but I'm still waiting for the balls to arrive. Not the first time I've said that. I tried to do the right thing by using a local independent Australian business rather than just using Amazon. But the customer service and support from Aramex, who's the delivery partner, has been shocking. I don't know what's going on. It was dispatched 2 weeks ago and they are still not here. Tried to do the right thing. Oh, also, I called a builder mate because my circular saw was really struggling while trying to do those profile cuts. And he said their problem was that, one, I was using 2.5 amp batteries. That's what came with the kit, and that's probably what will get most people by. But he said I should be using a different brand and I should get better batteries if I am going to be doing bigger projects like this. So it worked, but it struggled. While I wait for the balls to arrive so I can cut the rails down to the correct width, I've got a problem that I have been avoiding, and you might remember it from earlier. So remember when I decided to change the width of the table? It's now encroaching on both sides and I have been avoiding cutting it out. So I've laid the playing surface in the correct position. I'm now going to mark it out with a builder's pencil on both sides, cut it back, and then I might have to brace the table. I'm not sure, but we'll give it a go.
Now that I've got the pocket marked out on the table, using a roofing square, I'm going to extend the lines, mark it out a little bit further, and that will make it easier to see when cutting it out with a circular saw.
Cool, I've cut both sides. Now I'm going to do a plunge cut and just try and notch it out for what I need.
I start to cut out the brace with a jigsaw, and then finish it off with a handsaw where I couldn't quite reach. A couple of thousand taps with the hammer, and that's it. The notch is done. She ain't pretty, but we have the clearance. Next up, I need some braces to support the table. According to the tape measure, I need 4 pieces at 650 millimeters. I've ripped them down with a circular saw, and it gives me a chance to use up the MDF planks I bought earlier. Now I line up the board, punch in a couple of brad nails, add some screws for extra strength, and whoa.
Great, I just need to repeat this for the other sides and then we'll be done. There we go, the notches are cut and it's looking great. Now the playing surface is sitting exactly where it needs to, nice and square on the table beneath. I did wipe everything down with a wet rag to get rid of all the dust, let it dry and then put it there. I've checked it for being level and it's great. So I need to mount it now. So I've got 8G 50mm screws. I'm going to screw up from the bottom to secure it. It would be a lot easier to screw it from the top, but once I put the felt down, there'll be no way to remove the playing surface. So my plan is when we move in 3 months' time to be able to remove the playing surface, and then I can transport the table and the top separately. That's the plan at least. So let's get this stuck, but this really does mean that the time crunch starts now because we've got nowhere to eat dinner and my wife's not going to be thrilled. So let's keep pushing forwards. It's going to be a big night. I've clamped it down into position, but I'm just going to use a tape measure just to double check that it is still square after I've clamped it, because I can only put 2 in there. And that is all good. Let's get screwing.
We're finally making some really good progress. 18 screws later, and she's finally mounted. I can give her a quick wipe down with a wet cloth to get rid of any dust, and then I can lay out the rails.
Great, now that we've got our 27-degree profile cut here, I cut off a spare part of the bumper. It is a K66 bumper. So I want from the edge of the bumper to the edge of the rail to be 55 millimeters. So I used a pencil, I put a mark here, and then I used a roofing square, lined it up, and then threw down a line to mark it out. So I'm going to run the line the length of it, and then cut it, fit it, and see how we go. Using the line, I'm just going to set my guide to make sure that we can follow something. There we go. I'll check my depth, and then we can cut.
While the sped up version looks fine, this was not the reality of what I was dealing with. This is what I had.
I think I need some new batteries. Oh, this is tough. It's only one rail. I've still got 2 more to cut. While the battery and the saw are cooling down, I'm just going to cut this by hand. Great, so after many batteries, the inner rails have now all been cut down to size. The outer rails are sitting in place, but they haven't been fixed yet. So I've labelled the inner rail and the outer rail, just so I don't get mixed up. But the next step is going to be to go around to all the pockets and cut all the 45-degree angles, so the ball rolls in there smooth. So I'll make the cuts, sand the inner rails back, just so everything's flush, and then we can glue the bumpers.
Using a set square, I drew a 45-degree line from the corner of the middle and corner pocket. Now it's just a simple process of cutting them out. I use my roofing square as a guide for the 45-degree cuts. Followed by a quick sand, and that's it. Repeat the process for the other 5 inner rails.
All right, all the inner rails have been cut down with the 45-degree cuts for the pockets, and it's looking really good. So the next step is to apply contact adhesive to the inside of the K66 rubber, the bumper, and then on the inside edge of the inner rail. Now it says to apply a thin coat, leave for 20 to 40 minutes until it's touch dry, and then you get one shot at applying it, and it's permanent after that. So I'm going to take my time with it because I haven't used contact adhesive in this application before.
Using my wife's good kitchen scissors, I cut all the bumpers down to size. I numbered them to match the inner rail, and then I applied a generous amount of contact adhesive to the face of the rail and to the inside of the rubber. Now you can see I'm working on offcuts of timber. That's just to reduce the likelihood of any glue getting on the playing surface. After 20 minutes, when it was touch dry, I could line up the bumper and press it all down, followed by applying some masking tape. Moving back up to the playing surface, I'm applying a layer of masking tape around each of the pocket holes and a sheet of magazine paper, just to protect the surface from any potential overspray. I've moved on to cutting out 17mm strips of felt. You've guessed it, the thickness of the playing surface. Using an offcut of felt to protect the surface, I spray a light coat of contact adhesive around the rim and to the 17mm strip of felt. This contact adhesive takes between 5 and 30 minutes to become touch dry. So while we're waiting, I'm going to remove the masking tape and remove the piece of paper. Once the rim and the strip of felt are touch dry, I apply it to the inside. I wish I was more generous with the amount of contact adhesive I use. Some of them stuck beautiful and some of them required a few staples at the end. I'm going to make my way around the table, removing the alignment blocks. I used a set of pliers and it did the job, but a set of nail pullers would have made the process a lot easier. They'll certainly be in the shopping list for the next project. I'm not sure how much audio I've lost, but my microphone did die. So I've wiped the table down, I took a chisel and I knocked off any little high spot. It's now perfectly smooth. I used 3 different cloths, so it's completely dust free. But now, time for the felt. I'm not sure the best way to do this. Probably would be easier with 2 people, but it's not an option right now, so we are just going to wing it. Now you might be wondering, what felt did I choose? I opted for Temu's Finest. It's 8 foot, includes the rails, and it was $67. You might not be able to see, but there's still a lot of creases in the material. I don't know if you can iron it, but I'm gonna go Google it. Now, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure how to do this felt, but I'm going to staple it from underneath, but I'll put a couple of staples up here, and that should just show you the spacing that I'm going to be using. So I'm applying staples at 2 centimeter intervals. Not sure if that's correct, but just want to make sure I can hold enough tension without having any wrinkles. So I've anchored this corner. I've taken the tension down there, about the pocket's width, and anchored that corner. I came back, I anchored down here, about a pocket's width again, and then anchored out here. So now I've got tension down this strip and tension down this strip. I'm just using the ruler to mark out how far I've gone so I know where to go to on the next side.
And there we go. That was a lot easier than what I thought it would be. It was just trying to keep constant tension throughout, but it looks great. There are some marks on the felt, but that's just from where it's been sitting creased, so I'm sure they'll brush out later. Now time to cut out the pockets.
I apply some light tension by pressing my fingers into the pocket and then begin to place staples around the back rim of the pocket. Once done, I take my hammer and just knock all the staples back to make sure they're sitting flush. With a sharp utility knife, I'll cut an X in the felt, corner to corner, making sure to be careful not to overcut anything. Taking the front triangle of cloth, I'll pull it down, apply tension, and staple it off. This maintains tension across the playing surface. Once the front is secured, I can take the remaining triangles of cloth, pull them down, staple them off, use a hammer to knock in any staples that aren't sitting flush. You don't need to put too much tension on these, as that's what the staples around the rim are for. And repeat the process for the other 5 holes. After what seemed like 1,000 staples, we can now felt the rails.
So now that the contact adhesive is dried on these rails, it's time to cut down the rubbers. So using our ruler, we are just going to follow the same 45-degree angle that we cut the inner rail at. We'll do that on both sides. There you go, just following the same angle.
I snap off my knife to be using a sharp utility blade and then begin cutting down the line, mirroring the 45-degree cut on the inner rail. Be careful not to peel the rubber back, as it's only contact adhesive holding it in place. Now repeat on the other side. I did have to add some hot glue later on.
We're going to stick our end caps on now, and they just protect the timber and protect the bumpers. They're just these thin pieces of rubber that are covered in some type of fabric that I got off Amazon. Not sure the best way to do this, but I'm thinking I'm going to apply a small amount of hot glue around the border and then do some staples. So I'm going to line it up, hold it in place and wait for it to set, while keeping it flush. Great, and then I'll pump some staples into the timber. They are sitting a little bit proud, so just knock them flat with a hammer. I'm just going to square it up. So using a utility knife, I am just going to cut down the angle, trim that piece off. I already lined these 2 sides up, and then we'll do the same on the other side down here. Trim down the face of this rail too. Cool. It's all stuck, not going anywhere. Remove this piece of tape now. And I'll repeat on the other side. Cool, both sides done, both end caps.
Now, taking a piece of rail felt, we place it down. We need to transfer the number to identify the rail. So I'm going to write it on the back of the rail in multiple spots, because I'm not sure where you're going to be able to see it. I center the rail in the middle of the cloth to ensure it covers both sides. There's a thin strip missing in the back, but that's alright, you won't see that. Then I apply 2 staples. Moving on, I apply horizontal tension to the felt and staple it off. And for the other side, I pull horizontally and vertically to stretch the felt around, and I staple it off. I do the same process to the other side, stretching horizontally and vertically for the bottom piece.
Cool, so that it looks really nice. Now I can just go through. I'll put some more staples along this side, and then I'll pull the slack round.
I work my way across placing staples, then I go through and tap them all back so they're sitting flush with a hammer, pull tension and apply staples to the other side. Then just have to do the other side of the rail, and that's it. I wouldn't say this part of the process is difficult, but it certainly was time consuming. To get to this stage in the first rail took me about 15 minutes, but for the remainder of the rails, I got to this stage in about 3 minutes. Truth be told, this is a tricky part of the process. I watched so many videos, most of them are about an hour long, just to do one rail. But in the spirit of this video, I'll just speed up the process and show you how to do it. Essentially, you want to cut off the excess cloth and create a pleat that touches the playing surface so you don't see where it hits the table. If you're interested and want to see a more detailed process, let me know in the comments and I can send you an unlisted video that shows exactly how I did this in real time.
And voila, one rail done, 6 more to go. I'm done with the stapler. After what seemed like 1,000 staples, I'll say using a manual stapler was a lot of work. It seriously put a strain on my forearm. Hasn't been worked out that hard since I was 13, but you know, I'm always handy with the steel. Trigger fingers still got it. So everything's lying in place. Outer rails, inner rails. I don't know how I'm quite going to mount the inner rails yet. I have seen people do it with biscuit joiners, but I don't have one. So the best solution I came up with the tools that I have is to use these right angle brackets.
Well, it turns out that this was not the best solution, but I'll show you how I did it and why it didn't work. So using a piece of my kid's chalk, I drew a line to trace where the rail needed to be. I placed the 90-degree brackets and I drilled down the bottom sections. Then I drove longer screws into the top sections and replaced the rail.
We have a rather serious problem. I've had to pull these brackets out because it wasn't sitting flush. In the gap with the 2 screws, it made the edges rise, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to do it to get everything to sit flush. So I have come up with a solution, and it's going to take a lot of rework, but that's why I'm here, to make these mistakes and figure it out. So when you do it, you don't have to. So the solution to my problem, I'm going to clamp down
the inner rail on both sides, remove the outer rail, and then slowly work my way across, unpicking every top staple with a screwdriver.
Great, now that I've removed the staples, I can still see the chalk line that I made, and everything is still looking good and in the same position. So I'm going to peel the felt back gently, and I'm going to drive some 50mm screws
through the inner rail and into the playing surface. I work my way down the rail, applying 3 other screws to secure the inner rail to the playing surface.
Now that I've got some screws in there, I can go back round
and replace the staples. I use my fingertips to apply tension to pull the felt back over the rail while I'm pumping in staples. And thankfully, the felt is sitting in roughly the same position as the original. I work my way down the rail, banging all the staples in to make sure they sit flush. Now that everything's fixed and secured, I can remove the clamps, swing on the inner rail, and she's good to go. What a cock up though. I'll replace the outer rail, and thankfully she
still lines up. Looks good. Took a while, but now I've got to do it for the remainder. So I'll come back once it's done. Woohoo! All right, so all the inner rails have been mounted. Now I just need to take the outer rails off, sand everything back to get rid of all the pencil marks, and then we can get on to finishing.
My son faked a sick day so he could stay home from kindy. So we sanded back the rails with 180 grit sandpaper using a palm sander. We did all the rails, and I don't think I'll be faking a sickie for a while now.
All the sanding's done for the outer rails. It's now time to stain. I'm going to be using a wipe-on gel called Shipwreck Oak. A big thanks to Reggie for helping me sand.
After shaking the bottle thoroughly, I squirt some stain onto a rag and start rubbing it in a circular motion through the grain of the timber of the rails. On the first rail, I made the mistake of applying the stain directly to the rail, and trust me, this was a bad idea. She was dark. I should have read all of the instructions on the bottle, but we live and we learn. I also had an issue that I stained all of the rails at once, but by the time I had finished, I had to go back through and stain them individually. The pine absorbed a crazy amount of stain. However, one bottle was more than enough to get the job done. At this point, I should have noticed all of the excess wood glue that wasn't taking the stain, but I was too excited that I was so close to finishing. Ugh, I certainly won't make this mistake again with future projects. By now, I've figured it out, and I'm working on one rail at a time. After the stain is dry, I apply a coat of water-based polyurethane. Wait 2 hours, then give it a quick scuff sand and apply a second and a third coat.
All right, the outer rails have all received 3 coats of a clear polyurethane, and I have to say they are looking fantastic. Now it's time to mount them. So I have bought a box of M10 75mm cup head bolts. So I've got 25 of them and some washers. So this is a cup head bolt. It's 75 mils long, 10 millimeters in diameter, I guess, and there is a notch up here. So when I drill down, this notch will sit there and then the bolt will screw it through and it will pull it down to lock it in place to stop the bolt from just spinning. Now, I'm not sure of the placement, that's what I'm trying to figure out. See how we go. So to mount the short rail, what I'm going to do is I am going to measure in 300 millimeters.
Using a combination ruler, I'll measure down 100 millimeters. I'll align the 100 millimeters down with the 300 millimeters across, and I'm going to place a dot. I'll repeat this process for the other side of the short rails as well.
Now for the outer rail. So I've got my tape measure sitting right on the edge over here, and all of these measurements are 100 mils in from the nose of the cushion or bumper. So I've got a mark at 230, one at 570, one at 910, one at 1170. The next one is at 1510, and the final one is at 1850. So I've marked out these on both long rails and the short rails with 300 mil in from each side, all 100 mil off the tip of the cushion. So now my plan is to clamp one down and give it a go, have a crack.
I'm using blocks while clamping the rail down, just so I don't mark the fresh finish. I line up my drill bit with the mark and begin to drill down. Oh, what a mess. I need a better way to do this. Well, I don't want to make that mistake again. I would hate to get debris stuck between the inner and outer rail. So I work my way along the table and use a vacuum at the same time while I'm drilling the holes. And that seemed to work quite well. Time to add the bolts. Now the holes are a little bit tight, but I'm used to that. I'm a real one. Can't spit on these, so I'm going to tap them in with a hammer.
So now that the bolt's sitting in place, I'm going to put a washer on underneath and then the nut.
These nuts. Ha! Got him!
For this one, it was a 16 mil socket bit. And I am just going to drive that in, and then you can see the head of the cup head bolt going in. Voila, just like that.
Now I just make my way around the table, moving the clamps and the blocks, and bolting the nuts down.
The rails have finally been mounted and they are sturdy. We get a big gal up on that. So next I'm moving on to the nets that will go in the pockets. Look at that. Steph Curry with the shots, boy.
These billiard pocket nets are from Amazon, and they were around $15. I slowly work my way around the rim of the pocket hole. As you can see, I'm certainly not being shy with the amount of staples that I'm pumping in. The balls I have are quite hefty, so the nets need to be cradling a fair amount of weight. So lots of staples.
Cool. I can finally fit the end caps to the pool table. So I am just going to run a bead of hot glue around the outside.
Under the lip. It's quite a thick bead that I'm applying. I now apply some to the backside as well, press it into the hole and then hold it in place until the glue sets. Now these cups are from Temu, nothing but the best for this table, and then I just repeat the process for the other 5 cups. Despite all of my precautions, I managed to get quite a bit of dust on the table, so I brush it all off and vacuuming it all back.
And there we go. I did it. Absolutely stoked. Now I just need to learn how to play pool. She plays like an absolute dream, but I still need to cut a tabletop.
So that my wife gets off my case and that my family has somewhere to eat dinner. So I'm cutting down another 17mm sheet of ply. I'm cutting this one down to 2.1 meters and to 1.1 meters.
The table is great and I'm absolutely stoked, but what would I have done differently? I'll show you. I wish I stained these areas. I didn't think about how the cup would sit. And I think the big one is this eyesore here where I've cut it out. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but for now it will stay like that.
And obviously the excess glue on the rails that I showed you earlier, but it doesn't look too bad, so that's all right. Gee whiz, this tabletop is heavy. It would have been much easier with another bloke. Who said that? Oh, that's right, your mum. 2 blokes are always better than 1. That's her motto. Now, for all you nosy parkers, this table cost me 798 Australian dollars. That included all of the cues and all of the accessories. And it took me 35 hours of working time. Now, I'm sure you could do this over a weekend with a couple of people, but seeing I have kids, it took me over a month working evenings and nights. But here we go. Not bad.
Voila, there we go. I'm not sure how I'm going to finish this tabletop as I don't know what color palette my wife's going to be looking for in our new house, but you'll just have to stay tuned and find out. If you add me on Instagram, I'll put it up here and I'll put it in the description, you'll be able to see what type of finish I put on this tabletop. It's just a sheet of 17mm structural ply, so it's not going anywhere. But for now, that's it. I get a pool table, my wife gets her dining room table back. Winning! Catch you on the next one. Alright, for the corner pockets, it did take me ages to work this out. I did have to go buy a math set that includes a compass, a couple of rulers and a pencil. It was only $3 from Officeworks, but if I was to do it again, I would get a better set. This one's pretty flimsy and the pencil kind of rattles around and doesn't lock into place, which is essential. So, as I said, I did have many failed attempts trying to work out how to do these corner pockets, but I finally cracked it. How to do a corner pocket and how to do a middle pocket. So I will do them again to show you.
For this, I am working on 5mm grid paper, and it certainly helped to keep everything straight. If you have a printer at home or a photocopier at work, this would be a lot easier. I don't, so I had to draw everything by hand.
I'm just going to mark out some rough dimensions, and then we need a 45-degree line for the middle of it. So we've got our 45-degree line. We're going to measure 65mm up from the corner of the playing surface. So 65 mils is here. And then we're going to measure up another 45mm from this point. So 45 mils is here, and then from there we're going to measure up another 60mm. And then that will be the top of our pocket at 60 mils. Cool, now we can square off the top 60mm. Just using the grid paper to help with our lines. Brilliant. Now the total width of the pocket that we're doing is going to be 90mm. So we will go out 45 mils from each side and make a mark. We'll go out 45 mils from here as well. And we will make a mark for our 90mm.
From here, we'll square up and draw our baseline at 65mm. Now, using the mark that we measured out 45mm for the top of the pocket, we'll draw a straight line and we'll connect that to our baseline. And repeat on the other side. Coming back to the baseline, we'll measure up our 45 mils and mark out both sides. Then we can connect the 3 dots. Now, using our compass, we can set it from the baseline and we're going to take the pencil up to the top line. From here we can create an arc working side to side. Now we'll reset the pin to the midline, set the pencil to the baseline, and we will create an arc. As you can see, this compass is flimsy, but it still worked. Now this isn't a necessary step, but I'm taking a red biro pen and just marking out the lines so you can see the arcs better on camera. And
voila, our corner pocket template. Now for our side pocket, it's going to be 90 mils across, so we're going to measure out 90 mils. It's going to be 15 mils off the playing surface from the side, so we'll measure out 15 mils, and then we'll square this off, and then this will become the edge of the playing surface. So again, we'll measure it out to 90 mils, and then we'll make a mark at 45 mils, which will be our center line for our side pocket. And we'll take this up, be the middle, corners. Now we want to mark out 45 mils up our page from our bottom of our template.
Then we will measure up another
15 mils, and that will create our lip. So go up 15 mils, and then we will measure up another 15 millimeters. That will take us up to here. So now we'll square these off using our grid lines. A lot faster to mark out these middle pockets because there is no 45-degree angles. And our next one, we will mark out our widths, making sure that our width is 90 mils across the board.
Set the compass on the baseline and the pencil at the top line, and then I can go through and make an arc on both sides. Next, I set the pin on the middle line, the pencil at the baseline, and then I make the arc. Using a red pen, I mark out the arcs again. Again, it's only so you can see it better on camera, not really necessary. Now, for the middle pockets, you need 2, and for the corner pockets, you need 4. Photocopy them if you can. Thanks for watching.